So I've just read exactly what you've just read, and I want to just talk through and give a bit of background on my thoughts on this, what I was thinking when I wrote this up. So the first part of this chiller management system course obviously is the control strategies and some explanation around how to control the chiller system, staging, energy efficiency, optimization type of stuff, resetting temperature and pressure set points, condenser water stuff, all that sort of stuff, really important. And now we're sort of flowing into a discussion around the visualization of that information. Because I can guarantee you right now, comfort control is quite easy. When you start doing more advanced optimization, especially when you're considering how one system, the chiller system, might be influencing the energy efficiency of another system, for example, the air handling units or the cooling towers, you really need to have advanced visualization of information to help your brain diagnose those systems, right? You cannot optimize a control system if you don't have really useful information to help you diagnose things and work things out. So when I first started doing this, I started and I wrote out the graphics section first because, graphics is the thing we always think about. So I wrote out the graphics, 10 pages. Then I wrote out the alarms and the trends, then finally the reports. And as I was working through this and thinking about, okay, now how can we better put information on graphics? How can we have much better alarming? And we'll discuss a lot more of that in the next chapter around, warnings versus alarms, counting alarms, all those sorts of things. And trying to think about, building groups of trends that help us understand this information. It was really interesting because when I got to the reporting section, I thought, let me do a reporting section just for completeness. Graphics, alarms, trends, and then reports for completeness. It's a thing that BMS does. And when I was thinking through that, I had a massive revelation, I'm not sure if that's the right word, around just how terrible we are at reporting. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is that reporting is the most important thing, and it's the thing we do almost nothing on. So with reporting, we generally do like BMS wide health reporting. So we'll have a report on, for example, here's a report on all the offline controllers. It's the health of the system. Here's a report on all the overridden points. It's like the health of the system. And we might have a report on all the alarms. What we don't do is we don't build reports specifically for systems. We don't build reports that will study the performance of a system, like the chiller system, the cooling towers, air handling units, car park ventilation system. We don't create reports that help us diagnose and analyze information on a system basis. We're using reports to help us understand the general health of the BMS, offline controllers, overridden points, alarms, and those sort of things. And the more I started thinking about this, I started realizing that we can really big time impress our customers if you do a little bit of work on the reporting. So let's pause there for a second. The next part of this is, most of our effort around the visualization of information is with the graphics. Like everyone's working on trying to build really beautiful graphics, 3D rendered floor plans, 3D rendered air handling units or like fan call units and 3D graphics. You have a 3D chill water system for a primary secondary system. It's very difficult to understand what's going on. That 3D pipe work is super complicated. It's actually worse, in my opinion, than the standard 2D pipework drawings. So we're focusing completely on making our graphics look more beautiful. That's where our focus is completely. We're not thinking at all about how can we present this information on the graphic that makes more sense to people. We're just focusing on the beautifulness of the background of the graphic. That's all we're really doing. We're doing almost nothing on trying to improve our alarming, and we're doing very little on improving how our trends visualize information, and we're doing nothing on reporting. So the first two things I want to say was, and the points of this little introduction video is, the first thing is we're focusing on completely the wrong part of visualization, graphics. We should be focusing on the other stuff. And the second thing is, when we are focusing on visualization, we're only really focusing on the beautifulness of the graphic and not the information within the graphic. And let me just expand on that for a second there. If you think about it, and I'll say this in the text, but I'll just say it again on my tablet over here. With the graphics are useful, right? You can look at the graphics and you can see information. The problem with graphics is that you have to be physically sitting in front of the monitor looking at the graphics, or you are remotely dialing in to look at the graphics. So to use graphics as a tool, you have to physically be looking at the graphic. And that's not very useful because basically, and I know some of you might not agree with this, but basically no one is looking at the graphics. All right, the facility manager is not sitting there for 2 or 3 hours a day staring at the graphics on a monitor over here. The building owner also isn't doing that. Consultants aren't doing it. The mechanical contractor is not staring at the graphics for hours and hours. And actually, even BMS engineers are not looking at the graphics because they only look at the graphics if the service technician is actually on site, and they're only on site 1 day a week, or a couple of days a month, or 1 day a month, or a couple of days a quarter, or never. A lot of buildings have no BMS maintenance contract. There is no BMS service technician ever going to site. So BMS engineers are generally not looking at the graphics. When they are on site, they're fixing a problem, servicing some equipment, trying to sort something out. When service technicians go to site, they're not sitting there with a cup of coffee for 2 hours studying the chiller system graphic. They're not doing that. They're flat out working in plant rooms, in ceilings, in electrical risers. They're busy working there. So with graphics, the first issue is they're only useful to us if you're physically looking at them, and no one has time to look at the graphics generally. The second thing with trends are a bit more useful because you can see back in the past, like a time machine. You can look at the data from yesterday, last week, or last month. So trends have the advantage over graphics that they can see in the past, where graphics just tell you right now, this is the status of the BMS or this air handling unit. Trends go backwards, that's great. But you still have to be looking at them. With trends, you still have to log into BMS and sit there and study the trends and scroll through the timeline. It takes a very long time to study, for example, for a chill water system, the temperature and the set point, the pressure, the set point, the staging, 1 chiller, 2 chiller, the kilowatts, the COP, the chill water flow rate, the bypass valve, the condenser water. You try to study all those things from 2 weeks ago, very difficult to do that, very time consuming. So graphics, good if you need the information right now, a snapshot in time right now, graphics good for that. Trends are good because you can go back in time. Alarms are even more useful because you can not be looking at the BMS. You're working over here, doing something, you're not looking at the BMS, an alarm will pop up and say to you, hey, there's something wrong here, come and have a look at it. So alarms are good that you can not be looking at the BMS because no one generally is, and I'm generalizing, and they will tell you, hey, something's wrong, come and look at me, and then look at the graphics and the trends in the alarms, right? Now, reports are like gold. It's a gold mine, reports, because you can set up a report to email to the facility manager every morning at 7 a.m. and say, here's a report at 7 a.m. of some basic information at the building. So for example, if you've got 30 floors, in the report is a table with 30 floors, level 1 to 30, the minimum temperature, the average temperature, the maximum temperature, and how many VAVs are enabled. 20 out of 20 are enabled, or 10 out of 20 are enabled. Oh, 0 out of 20 are enabled, got a problem there. And on that little report, you can have the main air handling units, the supply temperature and pressure, the supply fan running, return fan running, car park exhaust fans, basic things, chill water supply temperature, chill water return temperature, heating hot water supply temperature, return temperature, condenser water supply and return temperature. So on one little report, you put basic information about the status of the whole building at 7 a.m. Now the facility manager doesn't have to log into BMS to see that. They're just working away, they get the email, they open it, bang, there's the information, scan through it, carry on working. No logging into BMS, VPNs, usernames, passwords, clicking through pages, waiting for it to open, none of that. That is extremely useful to a facility manager. You have a report that runs once a month or once a quarter. It goes to the chiller service technician. It's a report about the chill water system. Higher COP, lower COP, number of faults in the last month or 2 or 3, number of alarms, temperature, whatever it is. That's useful information. Once a month or once a year, you send a sustainability report to the sustainability manager for the portfolio of buildings or whatever it is. And all they see is stuff that's important to them: power usage, water usage, gas usage, this month, last month, comparisons, whatever it is. So reporting, the thing that we have spent the least amount of time in the last 20, 30 years, is actually the thing we should be spending the most time on, because it doesn't require us to physically log into the BMS. Just fire off those reports. Your customer will be blown away. You do that one simple thing. So I'm going to expand through now. We will go through the lessons on reporting and then alarms, trends, and graphics. But I'll just say quickly before we go, I spent a lot of time thinking about these next 4 chapters, like a month or 2, wrote up like 50 pages for the next 4 chapters. So it will be a bit overwhelming. And it's just the chiller system. We're just going to go with the chiller system now. A lot of information. That information, you could expand that into other systems, and maybe we'll do that together. When you do the an air handling unit course, maybe we'll do that as well. And I'll do reporting, alarms, trends, graphics for air handling units, maybe whatever it is, right? But all I'm saying to you now is, if you're reading through this and thinking, Bryce, you've gone a bit overboard here. I have gone a bit overboard here. Just pick 2 or 3 things out of the reports, 2 or 3 things out of the alarms, the trends, and the graphics, and go make some minor changes so that your customer can see what you're doing. If you're a service technician, for example, they're paying you to do work. You create this report. They can see it. They see the report. They feel like they've paid you and they've got something in return, not just preventative maintenance, checking valves, checking sensors. You did something to make their lives easier. All right, so we'll go through the reporting now, alarms, trends, and graphics. But I want to start off by just talking to you a bit more about my thought process around why I think that graphics, we're focusing in the wrong area. We should be focusing on reports, in my opinion, and I think you'll believe in a few hours' time. And other than us focusing in the wrong area of graphics, we're also focusing on the beautifulness of the graphic rather than the usefulness of the graphic. So we really have a massive amount of work to do on improving the visualization of data that the BMS collects.